We're doing Perek Dalet today, and today we're going to discuss number 1, what you do. Number 2, how what you do is more important than who you are. What? How can what you do be more important than who you are? That goes against everything I've ever learned, but we're going to find it out there. Also, we're going to find out about how to make Kabbalistic waterfalls, and also how to give Hashem a big hug. Have you ever given Hashem a hug? Well, I guess we'll find out today. I'm going to start off with this. That already in Perek Aleph, we talked about you have an animal soul. In Perek Beis, we talked about you have the essence of the godly soul, which is just a pure spark, just part of God. But then, when you look at the outer dimension of the godly soul, zoom out a little bit, and it's not just a spark. The spark goes out into 10 personalities, which we explained in chapter 3. Now, chapter 4, we're going to be saying, and we discussed in the previous classes in chapter 4, that you have 3 forms of expression for your godly soul. Thought of godly things, speech of godly things, and action of godly things. As opposed to expressions of the animal soul, is going to be thought, speech, and actions of very different things that we'll find out in chapter 6. Can't wait. But what is the thought, speech, and action of the godly soul? If you think about the teachings of Torah, or you think about Hashem, meditate about Hashem. Or how about the speech, if you speak words of Torah? Or another example, if you go over to your friend who looks like he's having a bad day, and do the Mitzvah of Yisrael and say, hey, how are you? It's so nice to see you today. What about actions? That's the easiest one. If you give a poor, undernourished, depressed, and downhearted young boy a apple juice box, and with that, you lift him up and give him the desperate nourishment that he needs, as well as the love needed to nurture his very soul. So we see that through thought, speech, and action in general, that's how you express your godly soul out into the world. What about thought? Thoughts on the inside? No. It's an expression within yourself, as opposed to speech is an expression out of yourself, and action is completely done on the outside. So we have these 3 levels of expressions. They're actually called clothing in the Kabbalah. You know why it's called clothing? Because clothing is how you express yourself to the outside. That's why we have someone like Chaim over here who goes down the street with a hat and jacket because he wants to express himself to the world, and everyone should see him like, ooh, you're from Chabad, right? You know, I used to go to Chabad. Would you like to kind of put on film with you? For sure. It actually happened to me once. I was traveling to Australia from New York, and I had a layover in San Francisco airport. And I was so bored. I was deadly bored. It was the most life-threatening moment of my entire existence. The boardroom in San Francisco airport, I was wandering around in some newsstand, little shop, trying to find if they had anything kosher in their fridge for less than $16 plus tax. And this guy comes over to me. He's like, excuse me, are you Chabad? I'm standing there wearing a hat, a jacket, I have a beard. It's like, had Chabad written in like massive cursive spray paint on my back. It couldn't be more obvious. I'm like, yeah, for sure I'm Chabad. He's like, I love putting on tefillin when I fly, when I travel. I didn't have a chance to. Can I put on tefillin with you? I'm like, for sure. We put on tefillin right there and then. How do you know I was Chabad? Because that's how I was expressing myself to the outside. So, when you have a godly soul, that's a state of being on the inside. There's nothing you do about that. No one can tell. Tell me, you see 2 people walking down the street. One has a godly soul, one doesn't. How do you know the difference? I was once doing Mitzvos in the Pletzel in France, and there was this guy and 2 girls walking down the street. And I go over to the guy, I'm like, hey, are you Jewish? You want to put in tefillin? And he's like, no, I'm not interested, sorry. And as they're walking away, one of the girls turns to him and was like, how did he know you were Jewish? Because he couldn't figure it out. And the guy's like, he could see it on my face. And meanwhile, I was just a young bocher, and I wasn't interested in talking to girls. So, that's the Hashkacha Protest story of the day. But either way, that's who you are. The personality of your soul, that's very much on the inside. Whether you have wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, or as we said, conception, contemplation, and connection with Hashem, that's on the inside. But to the outside, to express yourself in your conscious mind, with thoughts, to express yourself to the outside world, from the inside to the outside, is when you speak your thoughts out, and when you actually do something, and you give a poor yid a Twizzler, so that he can have the much-needed sugar to give him back life force and help him take on energy storage in his stomach for one day when he's stuck on a deserted island and save his life, then that way you're expressing yourself all the way to the outside. Okay, so now we figured out who you are. On the inside, you're a godly spark. On the outside, you're giving people Twizzlers. What is more godly? Thought, speech, and action? Or a godly spark? Before we say this, let's just say, by the way, where do you think you express your seichel most? your wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. That's most expressed in when you actively think Torah. By the way, what's the difference? I believe that seichel, the way your mind works, seichel is, chachma bin adas is the way you think, how your mind works. Machshava is what you're thinking. So when you invest the way you think into the thoughts of Torah, you're investing your mind into Hashem. As opposed to when you invest your other facilities of emotional facilities of love and fear into the action mitzvahs, then you're fully expressing the godly love and fear within yourself in the mitzvahs, in actions. Now, why is love and fear got to do with actions? For a very simple reason. All doing mitzvahs, put on tefillin, give tzedakah, love your fellow. All the doing things has to come from a place of love. If you're really going to do it and you're going to keep it going long term, it has to be because you love Hashem so much you're going to do it. You can force yourself to do it, but it's not going to last very long. And maybe you can train yourself to do it mindlessly. It's kind of sad. But if you love Hashem, that's going to propel your actions nonstop. What about the don't do mitzvahs? Do not kill. Do not steal. Do not remove the stabs from the holy ark. Do not tear the neckplace of the high priest's robe. What other practical ones are there? Do not eat a... What? Which one? Oh, there we go. Don't cut the corners of your beard. Very important one.
Don't eat grasshoppers.
Yeah, all the good ones. So, all those has to be inspired by fear of God. Now, when we say fear of God, there's a very big mistake people make. People are like, ooh, God is so big and scary, he's going to eat you. That's crazy. Hashem made you and he loves you. If he didn't love you, he wouldn't have made you. He'd just delete you. Rather, fear means awe. A-W-E. Not like, oh, A-W-W-W-W with sad emoji. No, awe, A-W-E. It's like, whoa, Hashem is here? Obviously, I'm going to do the right thing. And then there's a deeper level, which is embarrassment. You're like, me go against Hashem? I don't want to be caught with my pants down in front of Hashem. So embarrassing. By the way, what's going to happen if Mashiach comes and you're in the middle of doing an Aveira? It'll be so embarrassing. Make sure not to do Aveiros in case Mashiach comes. So, now that we figured that out, let's talk about you versus who you are. Who are you? Why are your actions better than who you are? It's the craziest thing to say. You go against everything every psychologist will tell you. Now, you ready for this? There was one time, Tzemach Tzedek was a little boy, and he was being raised by his grandfather after his mother passed away. And his grandfather, Alter Rebbe, he was playing in his grandfather's lap. So cute. Yeah. Back then, before they had phones to take pictures of when your kids are being cute, people actually interacted with the kids when they were being cute. So, what happened is that the Alter Rebbe said to his young grandson, he was going to teach him an incredible lesson. He said, where's Zayda? Where's Zayda? Zayda means granddaddy. Where's Zayda? So he pointed, the Tzemach Tzedek pointed to his face. And he said, that's not Zayda, that's Zayda's face. Pointed to his nose. That's not Zayda, that's Zayda's nose. He grabbed his beard. That's not Zayda, that's Zayda's beard. He holds his hand. That's not Zayda, that's Zayda's hand. Where's Zayda? Poor kid couldn't figure it out. What do you want from me? I don't know where Zayda is. If everything I'm pointing at is Zayda's face and hand and nose and shoes, then where is Zayda? But he was a very, very smart child. Anyways, the conversation ended and Tzemach Tzedek went off to play somewhere. And he started crying, screaming. You know, when a kid falls over and gets hurt. I was playing with my friend today and his baby was sitting on the floor happily. And all of a sudden she started screaming. She fell over. So, what happened was the Tzemach Tzedek was screaming. The Alter Rebbe runs over, full of concern, empathy, love for his grandchild, and says, are you all right? What's going on? And Tzemach Tzedek, the little boy, looks up with a smile, and he says, there's Zayda. He finally captured the essence, your concern, your love. That's who you are on the inside. He figured it out. Look at that. So who are we on the inside against the outside? On the inside, we are people who have a part of Hashem in us, but we are not Hashem. Are you Hashem? We have a lot of things that we have expressions of Hashem in us. We have godly parts of us, but we are not Hashem. Let's talk about Chatcha Pfeiffer. You guys know this guy? Chatcha is a great Yiddish name, and Pfeiffer means a whistler. It means a guy who just hangs around doing nothing besides whistling to himself. It's a good way of saying, and then another semi-Yiddish expression, no do goodnik. No do goodnik. He's not doing any good. The guy who hangs around and wastes his time. So Chatcha Pfeiffer decided he wants to visit the king. He wants to see the Tsar. She goes up to the Tsar's palace, and the guard says, excuse me, who are you? And he says, you don't know who I am? And the guard's like, I'm not sure. He's like, you know that minister? You know the minister of finance? You know the minister of education? You don't know who I am? The guy's like, ooh, this guy knows the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Education. Okay, you can come in. He gets in. He walks through the palace to the royal chamber. And there's another guard. And they're like, who are you? And he says, you know the Minister of the Interior? Yeah, you know the top general? You know the field marshal? Yeah, you know them and you don't know who I am? And the guy, it's like, oh, he knows all these generals. Oh, I better not get on his bad side. Okay, you let him in. He gets to the king's throne room. The guy outside is like, who are you? He says, tell me, you know the prince? Do you know the sergeant of the guard? You know the top minister? I know. Do you know them? How come you don't know me? Because, ooh, this guy's really important. VIP, lets him straight in. Comes in front of the Tsar. And the Tsar's like, who are you? He's like, you know the minister? He's like, yeah, the minister works for me. He's like, you know the prince? Yeah, that's my kid. He's like, you know the top general? Yeah, he works for me. He's like, oh, you know all these guys? The king's like, okay, I know all these guys, but who are you? He's like, I'm Chacha Pfeiffer. The king's like, get out of here. Throws him out of the palace. Because who are you? You are not God. You are not God, sorry to tell you. But you know what is God? Where God puts himself. That's why it says, where do you find Hashem? In the place where you find the greatness of Hashem is a place where you find his humility. What does that mean? That where can you find him? Really, Hashem shouldn't be found at all. We shouldn't have any connection to Hashem. I know all about potato chips and onion rings. I know all about physical things. I don't know anything about Hashem. But you know where you can find Hashem? Where he lets himself be found. Where his place of humility, where he brings himself down to our level. And he's like, you know what? I really want to join you. That's where we can find him, where he lets himself be found. And that is in the Torah. Now, Hashem invested himself in the Torah and the Mitzvos. So when we're doing Torah Mitzvos, and we're investing ourselves in Torah Mitzvos, we're investing ourselves in Hashem himself and becoming one with Hashem. Isn't that crazy? So I'm a person. I'm sure I'm a good person. I've got lots of good things on the inside. But when I do a Mitzvah, or when I learn Torah, now I'm putting myself into Hashem's embrace. I'm becoming one with Hashem. I'm connecting with Hashem. That's the inner meaning of mitzvah. It's from the word savsa, which means connection. Every mitzvah you're connecting with Hashem. Now you're going to tell me that's not Hashem. That's a physical thing. Putting a rusty penny in the pushka, you're telling me that's Hashem? No. Because Hashem brings himself down to our level. And even though it doesn't look spiritual, that's because it was a spirituality. We wouldn't be able to connect to it. Hashem did us the favor of coming all the way down, investing himself into physical things. Like a Sefer Torah is made out of physical parchment with physical ink. And the stories in the Torah are very physical stories about people who lived and things they did. And they're very inspirational, but they're physical. Mitzvahs, putting on tefillin, it's physically made. You can't just sit and meditate. That's not going to work. That's not going to connect you to Hashem, because Hashem came all the way down. Think of it like a waterfall. Now imagine you have this massive waterfall that comes down from a beautiful spring of clean water. It comes through all these different streams. It picks up dirt, and it picks up fish and rocks and mud, and comes down the waterfall, and then goes through the Coca-Cola factory and gets added a whole lot of chemicals to it, and gets fizzy and bubbly, and it comes out in a can, and then someone drinks the can, and then they throw it up, and then what do you have left? You have some crazy water. I don't know. At the bottom of your waterfall, the water doesn't look the same as it did at the top. It's not clean anymore. But it's the same water in essence. The same way Hashem's Torah and Hashem's mitzvahs. That the godliness, the spirituality, we don't see that in the physical action we're doing. But it's the same thing. It just looks different. It just tastes different. Because Hashem's brought it all the way down, all the levels of Atzilus and in all the higher realms, till it gets down to somewhere where we can appreciate it. But on the inside, its essence, who is it? It's Hashem. It's Hashem's investment. It's Hashem's will and wisdom. And like we explained many times in Tanya, Hashem's wisdom is one with himself. Otherwise, it would be like wisdom and God, like two gods. That would be terrible. So, in short, what happens when you do a mitzvah? It's like you're getting a giant hug from Hashem. You're investing yourself in a mitzvah. Now, I'm like fully concentrating on learning Torah. Right now, I'm running to give someone a dollar so they could buy a sandwich because they're starving hungry. I'm doing tzedakah. Now, what are you investing yourself in? A mitzvah. And what is a mitzvah? It's Hashem. So you're being invested in Hashem. It's like Hashem's giving you a giant hug. But come back tomorrow to find out how not only does Hashem hug you, you can hug Hashem back. Find out tomorrow.